we've shaped the media ecosystem around, how do we attract straight white men? Straight white men are going right. How do we stop that from happening? How do we engage with those men? And we've radically shifted the media ecosystem around young politics around those men specifically. Why can we not do the same thing for Black people as a whole, as in general? Why can we not speak to their issues? Because it seems like the Democratic Party, for some reason, has a way of doing.
Hello? Bro, you got to turn on your virtual camera.
Right, you're right.
Jesus Christ, this guy, bro, literally a streamer, and he still doesn't. Amateur hour. SeanDaBlack, everybody, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Friend of the show, SeanDaBlack. You already know. So what happened? What's going on?
Honestly, I can't even tell you like exactly how this started. And I think people are just, very heated, just in general, because it's Twitch, so it gets like that.
Yeah.
But I can explain what my perspective is and what I've been talking about. So like people aren't confused and people aren't saying, this is what I believe when it's not what I actually believe.
Yeah.
I guess you can start with kind of the overall issues that I think people are seeing with the chat. I can speak to like what my experience on that has been as well. And it's about just frustrations about the space being overwhelmingly white, as all spaces tend to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that leading to chatters not necessarily listening to marginalized people when they have issues. And so this kind of came to a head with like the Lolo situation. That's kind of how it started, where people were being like, oh, chatters were like reflexively defending Lolo and yelling at and accosting the victims. While like just like off of reflex.
I didn't see any of this because I don't have Twitter on my phone, which is a great thing for me at least.
Yeah, I also don't. This is not like about like you specifically. I don't blame you for like really any of this. It's just a more of a chat focused conversation, the way the communities operate. So what happened with the Lolo situation, and then when Mike got banned, there were people who were kind of weaponizing or coming after or attacking marginalized people that did have an issue with what Mike was saying. I'd say that, there probably were people who were going, probably harder on Mike than I probably would have. But they were coming at Mike or coming at the people who were saying, hey, what Mike is saying was unacceptable. And it kind of feels like it kind of led to this culture of if you're a marginalized person and you're speaking up about something that upsets you in the space, then you will be kind of ejected from the space because you're not like playing ball. And that's something that I felt that I've seen from my perspective. I know we talked about the Dean stuff a while ago.
Yeah.
Where we didn't have an agreement on that, and that's fine. But
wait, let's reflect on that though for people who have no idea, because there's people in here that don't know even who Mike is, and so Dean is a liberal TikTok debate guy. And apparently in the past, not that long ago, as a matter of fact, only a couple of years ago, he was like a MAGA guy. And I think he got canceled or he got called out for saying slurs back in the day, right? Is that, am I getting it? Because I'm unfortunately not very tapped into everything that's going on. But he's the guy who always on TikTok with the rest of the TikTok debate guys will debate Trump supporters, and he'll be like, why did you vote for Trump? And I personally think that's unproductive, and I've tried to communicate that to him, and with the hopes that he will move away from that and move away from liberalism in general, and have a more well-defined worldview. But I also think it's partially because he's young too.
Yeah. And my frustration with that is not necessarily with your perspective of trying to do outreach to Dean, because he is a young person, but more of frustration with the idea that for a lot of young white people, they can have that experience and they can have this radical shift in their perspective, and they are oftentimes elevated to the point of the leader in the left space when it comes to marginalized people talking about their own perspectives. they're kind of like ejected from the space, being like, you know, I hear what you're saying or whatever, but like we're also doing this thing right now. And that's where my frustration with that came from. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, because I agree with your perspective of doing outreach and talking to people and getting in spaces where the left usually isn't in. I think you do that very well. The issue with that oftentimes comes is when they're like the people that are brought in are oftentimes elevated to the space of like the leaders in the left, while like marginalized people are still talking amongst or trying to talk about their issues and their perspectives,
Well, I
and
don't
they're
think
not taken as
he's a
seriously.
on the left at all. To be fair,
Yeah,
like I mean, I don't even think this person is on. I would like for him to be, but I think that there would be a lot of growth for that to happen, regardless.
I agree. The issue being is that I mean, he's still a popular voice. So I think it goes deeper than this is like I'm just describing like white supremacy at this point. Like him being a voice even in like liberal spaces when there aren't necessarily voices of like black voices in those spaces to the same degree.
Yeah,
Like Harry Sisson, going on like Adam Friedland's podcast or getting invited to the White House or talking all the opportunities that he has. There are like black liberals who are in similar circles, but they're also still not taken as seriously as Harry Sisson is because Harry
yeah.
Sisson is a young white man. And so there is just a difference in experience when marginalized people share their perspectives, even in liberal spaces, but that extends also into like leftist spaces as well. And so
I agree.
during that situation, there were members of the chat who were, when I had that critique, who were saying that I was a wrecker, that I was a liberal, that I was opposed to change. There were some people who were saying that I was joining like Ethan Klein's hate brigade for even levying the complaint in the first place. And so I was just like, it's kind of weird because I've been in this community for so long that I thought that I would be receiving a little bit of grace and a little bit of charitability
One
when I
hundred
levy a
percent.
critique that like, I'm not immediately ejected being like, oh, I'm actually a wrecker. I'm not a part of this space.
No,
And so I think,
I completely agree with you. I think that uh, it goes both ways, and it should be more charity extended to someone like yourself and your complaints, rather than more charity extended to someone who, in the past, or even continues to actually demonstrate that they're like a leftist or a progressive, but just because they resemble the same background as a person or the same life experiences that like a white person has had. I think that's where it comes from. Like there are a lot of people in this community that are fairly progressive, but I think that they weren't necessarily fairly progressive in the past. So when they see someone who has been in the past, they see themselves in that person. So they're
yeah,
way more inclined to listen to their complaints than to listen to your complaints. And that is, you're not wrong when you say that that does come from a place of, I mean, there is definitely a blind spot that people have there towards a black content creator in this community that's like experiencing something or making valid concerns. My
yeah,
my attitude on this, and I've told you this before. I mean, you know this. You've heard me speak on this probably. Is that there will be people in this community that literally are straight up Nazis, even, right? And obviously, as long as they don't say Nazi shit in the chat, they're welcome to listen and hopefully be convinced and hopefully have their minds changed. And I'm using the most extreme example of this right now.
mhm,
Obviously, that's not the case for many people. But given that we do live in a white supremacist country and anti-blackness is foundational, and it is exhibited in every orifice of modern society, that I and also because of my own personal privilege as well, I am way more like I have way higher tolerance for that kind of thing
yeah,
than someone who is a black would in that situation, because like you're experiencing anti-blackness every single day of your life and it has shaped your life in a very meaningful way. But that's what I always try to stress to people is that when I talk about trans issues, when I talk about black issues, when I talk about undocumented migrants, the goal there is to get people in the margins on our side, and they're not going to come to our side on every single front immediately. But I think through time, people become more understanding and change their minds. So it's not a completely safe space.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think a part of the problem is the fact that some of the people, when they do come in, a lot of people, like a lot of people in chat, think that their learning is done. They think that they've arrived at the leftist position. They've heard everything we're saying, and they're like, okay, we got it, we're here. 'Cause I feel like a lot of those people have came into my chat when I love these critiques the last 2 days, and are saying, you actually don't understand this. This is actually what was going on here. Trying to explain to me like the foundations of like white supremacy and why I'm incorrect for explaining the core tenets of it and how it manifests itself in leftist spaces. And so I think people who are who listen to you and understand your perspective will then turn around and be like, I'm not gonna go any further. I'm not gonna do any more reading. I know people like other people on like leftier than this space have had that critique as well. But when it comes to talking about Black issues and the Black experience, when Black people are talking about, hey, this is what my experience is, and this is what I'm seeing in this space, they think, well, I'm already done learning and I'm a leftist. So therefore, you must be wrong when talking about your experience. And I think that's coming out of some chatters when they are, especially like when they start, like when they call me a liberal. This is the thing that like that really irks my brain. Because our chatters who will position it as like Sean's a liberal, he's doing identity politics when he talks about Black issues from like long-term community subs, and that's that hurts my feelings a little bit because I've been in this community for so long. I thought that people would understand my perspective and what I'm saying, and that I try my best to not exhibit, like liberal tendencies. But like I feel like I'm being put in this box of like, oh, if you critique this space because this is a leftist space, you must be a liberal because you're not 100% on board with everything that's being said here, and therefore we don't have to, regard any criticism that you have as serious because of that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I also don't think that like everyone is always going to agree 100% either. Like we can have reasonable disagreements on certain things, you know what I mean? Or place emphasis on certain things more so than others. Like that's a normal and healthy part of discourse, and normal and healthy part of like coalition building as well. And I think people need to stop being hostile. And also on top of that, they shouldn't wait for me to pull someone like yourself up on the chat to arrive at that conclusion either. Like they should be adults about it on their own. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is something that Caroline talked about in the clip. I don't know if you saw the full Caroline clip. But Caroline talked about it in the clip with like the Lolo situation where like she was calling out some of the chatters who were being parasocial towards Lolo and only changed their mind when I don't want to call specific chatters here, but like there was a chatter online or a Twitter user online who like changed their bios like Lolo overruled the defend attacking the victims until you said something about it, and then they were like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do this. There are people who like I hear like so closely do the parasocial nature to what you say that they won't craft up an opinion of their own, and then they will go out to like other spaces, Twitter, Reddit, what have you, and act on like I'm doing Hasan's will by calling people the woke of the day in this other space that is separate from Hasan. And I think a lot of chatters see that, which is why a lot of chatters are so repulsed by the idea of like woke of the day. Even though I understand, I understand what's being said with woke of the day, and I get what it means. The way that it's utilized outside of this space is so far from the intent, what it was actually used for, that when they hear it in this space, they're like, okay, this is bad. This is not good. I don't like this.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I don't know what else to say about it other than that. I don't know what more I can do to make sure that people are not, I guess, like defending people parasocially and only changing their perspectives after they hear my take on something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know what there is to do. I don't think it's why part of the reason why I didn't necessarily think this conversation needed to be had, because like we agree on pretty much everything. I share your perspective on a lot of things, and I think some chatters like were utilizing my words to try to get my point across, not in the best way. But also some people also just imagine that when I was talking that I had a disagreement with you, even though we've spoken about some of these things before. I understand what you do for the left. I understand why it's important. It
Mm-hmm.
shaped a lot of what I do and what I try to advocate for as well. Um, and so I think my overarching point is to not treat, you know, good faith critique, because there's a lot of bad faith, but not treat good faith critique as though they are like foundational disagreements that we need to stamp out because they're like, liberal, or that they're, uh, not real or something like that. Because we do have a lot of agreements.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's like, I love FD Signifier, for example, but there are disagreements that I have with him, both in private or in public as well. And ultimately, I would never let that get in the way of, because it's not like foundational. It's not like we're not having disagreements on anything that is outside of like methods, for example, or even
Hmm.
like Bad Empanada.
Yeah.
There is plenty of disagreements that I have with Bad Empanada in the way that he conducts himself, but I don't even spend much time just like talking to him and criticizing him on any of those things as well, because like I ultimately am of the mindset that like we are, like I believe, especially on the issue of Israel, that like he wants the apartheid to end. He wants
Yeah.
what's best for the Palestinian people, and the same goes for a litany of different issues that we have here in terms of organizing in America as an American left. And I also do recognize that there are plenty of blind spots in terms of organizing in black spaces in general for the left.
Yeah.
So I think
I think
you're
that was
right.
a
I think that I think that, like, I've talked about this before, especially with like the Zoran stuff, because there are
yeah.
plenty of young black leftists out there, and there are plenty more that could potentially become young black leftists, right? Who are
Yeah.
just like kind of rudderless and have checked out of politics altogether. And I think that's an environment that we need to tap into, and it's not going to happen if it's like if we're pushing away people, if we're being off-putting.
Yeah. Especially when you're trying to do outreach in those spaces. I think FT's video speaks to that specifically about there's a very clear conclusion or thesis for that video was just talk to Black people, get their experience, understand what they experience, and then speak to that experience as well.
Yeah.
So I was talking about this in the clip from a few days ago, and that is we've shaped the media ecosystem around, how do we attract straight white men? Straight white men are going right. How do we stop that from happening? How do we engage with those men? And we've radically shifted the media ecosystem around young politics around those men specifically. Why can we not do the same thing for Black people as a whole, as in general? Why can we not speak to their issues? Because it seems like the Democratic Party, for some reason, has a way of doing so. They have a stranglehold on the Black community, and they can speak to Black issues. What are we doing when it comes to the Bernie Sanders of the world? How are we feeling when we're doing outreach with those people to attract those people into our spaces? And I think part of it is that the spaces are already overwhelmingly white, which means that it already inherently is off-putting towards Black people who want to see themselves in the spaces that they occupy. And the second part of it is I think when it comes to getting the Black perspective, I think people oftentimes fail. I think Bernie Sanders didn't do as well as he probably could have in that regard. I think Zohran Mamdani is doing a lot better than Bernie Sanders is doing, and which is why he's succeeding a lot more when it comes to like young Black voters.
Yeah. No, well, I think that the reason why both Bernie and Zohran Mamdani are more appealing to young black voters goes beyond representational politics, though. I think it's just more so like the turnout machine, older voting demographics, and their tendency to be more conservative or more safe in terms of like their voting patterns. At least something that I've seen. Like, you might speak to this a little bit better than myself, of course, but I think there's a lot of different complications there, but in terms of representation, I think, yeah, like people from these communities would be far better advocates. Like, I don't even mean skin color. I mean like literally from these communities, like directly from the zip code, would be far better at getting their neighbors on board with these kinds of politics than people that are coming from different backgrounds without that same world experience, without that same worldview. So I think there's a lot of importance there as well. As far as like the younger black voters goes, I think the reason why they have they find themselves captivated by Bernie Sanders or Zohran Mamdani's politics is because they're young, they're tapped in, they're online. They also, like, we all experience the same resentment. My fear always is that resentment inevitably, if there's no singular figure that they can build a coalition behind, that resentment inevitably leads to nihilism. And there is a lot of reactionary tendencies in all young people, not just like young white men, but because you were talking about like white people, you were talking about like young white men becoming radicalized. I think that like the media is oftentimes hyper focusing on that stuff, but I think that young black and brown men are also becoming more nihilistic, becoming more right wing as well. Not in their voting patterns, just in general. Yeah. Most young people just don't vote. But I think like when they're exhibiting, when they're talking about their own political worldview, I feel like they find themselves leaning more in the direction of like being apolitical, which is usually a substitute for being right wing, without even recognizing that it's right wing. Like I feel like we've lost this space of being apolitical to the right pretty handily. So that's part of the reason why I try to be more graceful with having these sorts of conversations whenever there's like people that are coming in, unless they're like directly attacking me on the basis of being like a terrorist or something. I'm usually I try to be as forgiving as possible because I know that they just don't know any better.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. The only thing I would push back on is yes, there are young black and brown men who are also being radicalized. I think the difference is that they're not being marketed to in the same way that young white men are, because young white men are seen, or like I think we said it with like older black voters being seen as more conservative. I think that's also true. But young white men are not seen as like a part of a monolithic group or monolithic force in the same way that like young marginalized men are. So like when young black men are being seen as reactionary, that makes the black community seem as more reactionary.
Oh no,
in the lens of how it's looked outside.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. You're absolutely right about that. I mean, I've talked about this before with like the root.com style article heads that write like black liberal academic article writers will oftentimes give like a permission structure for white people to also exhibit white supremacy by talking about by hyper focusing on black people are so homophobic, black people are so queerphobic, there's so much misogyny in the black community. But it's like that's every community, and singling out black people, of course, is like just a way for liberals to basically say the same racist black men are violent trope, but in a more woke way. So obviously that's not what I'm talking about at all, but that's part of the reason why I guess the only reason the disagreement that you and I might have is that's part of the reason why I do focus on universality. Hasan, you do this though. I literally do the exact opposite of this, for the record. I mean, or maybe Sean, you might actually have a disagreement with me on this. I think I do the opposite of this, but
I don't see you as speaking to like black people are more homophobic. I have seen with like Zoran specifically the take that black people are not implicitly more Islamophobic, but in to Zoran's defense because they are exhibiting Islamophobia as opposed to a more general wariness to progressive politics. No, you didn't say that. I'm saying that that is what people have seen, so they may be attributing that position to you.
People are saying black people are Islamophobic. Black people are Muslim. What the I mean, that's crazy. I don't think that at all.
Yeah, that's what I have seen. But so I haven't seen you doing that. It's like black people are monolithically this one thing. I forgot what my point was. So yeah, that's I haven't seen that personally.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I remember on universality. we actually might have a disagreement on universality specific. I was talking about this morning as well.
Yeah.
I think there are limits to universality that I think are not adequately addressed in leftist spaces and in like progressive leftist politics when it comes to things like free healthcare. I think oftentimes when marketing leftism or progressivism to Black people, people will just drop like free healthcare as like, oh, of course, why wouldn't Black people like free healthcare? Free healthcare will help them specifically, along with helping white people. Oftentimes, losing the fact that healthcare affordability is different than healthcare access, and a lot of times, like access to like healthcare clinics, you know, doctors that will actually listen to Black people when talking about their pain and prescribing prescriptions because of medical racism, stuff like that. When it comes to like access or like actually getting equal services to white people, is not a specific focus that is talked about on the left. We're always focusing on like affordability or college. Like free college is a great policy, but it's very hard to do. It's very hard to implement in a way that is equitable when Black people are still faced with admission discrimination.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think is missing on the left because we always focus on like the economic policies about like affordability without talking about the access part of it. And universality is only that would be a part of universality, but for some reason, the leftist movement currently is not focusing on that part of universality.
Yeah. I mean, I always say that universality is a marketing tactic. Like I like the example I use is not on anti-blackness, but I usually use it for like transphobia, where I always say like, no, you say you want Medicare for all, and if people are like, well, what about trans people? They get medicine too. It's like, yeah, they're gonna get medicine too. Shut the fuck up. Like that's my my argument is that, and the reason why I take a class first approach on this kind of thing is specifically because it's the broadest, it's the broadest filter that you can have. But that doesn't mean that you're supposed to compromise on other issues of inequality.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the time it comes into the point of, especially when you're talking to Black people, which is what this conversation is really about. It's like, you know, speaking to the experience of Black people. When you're talking to Black people and you're talking about the issues that they face, universality may not be the best way to bring them on board with the mission, right? When you're talking about like, you know, free buses or free public transportation, that's good, but if you're talking to a person in an underserved community where they don't have access to public transportation, they're not gonna see that as a policy that works for them. Even if your plan about, you know, public transportation is expanding access to public transportation. That's the avenue that you should take when marketing that policy to that person. And
I
so
think you
I
bring
think
up a really good point. I think that on the national stage, like talking about universality is one thing, but I think it's also important to stress that there are plenty of underserved communities that don't even have the bare bones, like don't even have the basics, like a foundation to build on in terms of like any sort of expansive universality that that you can focus on as well. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's a good way to market it. It's a good way to talk about these policies in general. But I mean, I will say, I don't think people, when they say Medicare for all, they're not. That's actually a really good point that you made, unironically, because I always have been like, I don't understand why won't people listen to Bernie's message on Medicare for all? Like that's going to help Black people too. Like as a matter of fact, it's going to help Black people, a higher percentage of Black people than it's going to help a percentage of white people, because like Black people are underserved. But I do think that it's I mean, that I don't think that Bernie Sanders was trying to do like a FDR style New Deal where they would just like write Black people out of this conversation. But I do think that it's important to stress that this would all that you should build a foundation to begin with, so that it's not just like a promise of everybody getting healthcare and then underserved communities just staying behind, like America always has kept them behind.
Yeah, but I think it's purely the way that it was viewed or how it is viewed from the Black community, and why Bernie seemed to have struggled with like the middle aged, you know, Black vote, and how they view policies from like progressive candidates. Because I think they understand that this would be in general be a good thing if they had equal services. But there's still a disparity in the way that white supremacy serves white people and still underserves Black people in all regards. And so they feel like if you talk to them and you're not bringing up that fact, you're like, okay, you don't really understand my perspective. You don't really understand what I'm going through. So why would I vote for you? Why would I support you when it feels like you have your own plan for the white community and you just want us to come along for our vote? Even though Bernie Sanders would have helped everybody in this country. Like that's not a question.
Yeah.
It's just the
Also,
way that it was viewed.
chatters, like Sean is not saying Sean is a Bernie bro. Like he's not saying that like Bernie Sanders is bad, right? I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think you are.
To be fair, I couldn't be a Bernie bro. I couldn't vote for him in 2016 because I was
I'm
16-year-old
just.
child.
I mean,
But yeah,
like,
I am pro Bernie Sanders. I like Bernie.
Yeah.
I like what Bernie Sanders is doing. I'm not saying Bernie Sanders is bad. I'm saying that Bernie Sanders, or like it's not even about Bernie Sanders specifically. It's about like the white leftist movement, the progressive movement, and how it oftentimes messages to people based upon their experience.
Someone in the chat said FD had an interesting point, saying the highlighting how these policies will help Black people is a poison pill given how racist America is. But I think he has like a more a pessimistic approach on this issue.
I mean, FD's older than I am, so he has like he does have a more like he has to tune into like the older, not calling him old, but like older Black vote. So that he might be correct.
Oh no, for sure
on that. But I'm speaking to what I've seen in my community as well.
Yeah.
I do think an interesting point that I did hear yesterday that it's not the biggest deal, so don't crucify me, chat. But it's about Zoran's African American thing.
Oh yeah.
Because I want to preface it by saying I don't agree with like the oh let's take Zoran to town for his African American take or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do think when it comes to like messaging to Black people, oftentimes white progressives will fall into this trap of trying to defend things that they don't need to defend. Because as you said yesterday, it's bait. And oftentimes white leftists will take the bait to try to defend it because they want to defend the honor of Zoran instead of actually just maneuvering around it. So if a Black person brings up to you, like, oh, he put African American on his college application or whatever, don't try to defend it in a way to be like, oh, technically he's African American, he's like, he's born now.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's why I said it's bait. Yeah. I think the media is let's just say they're no longer as capable as they used to be, but like when it comes to stuff like this, they're still pretty devious, where like that story was placed in the New York Times specifically for that reason. So that people would turn around and be like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" He's like people would defend it. Most people would defend it on the boundaries of like, this is ridiculous. It's not like something irredeemable. You're being silly. And then there would be plenty of people who would then turn around and be like, well, he's from Africa, he's from Uganda. And then that would be used as like the most significant, like that would be highlighted, that would be elevated. I talked to FD about this as well, specifically. But luckily, I don't think that turned into that big of an issue overall. Or maybe it did. I don't know, but it didn't.
No,
it didn't
I don't
feel
think
like
it
didn't reach that level. It didn't reach that like boiling point of like, there we go again. Like Bernie bros are being racist or being insincere. And
I think part of the reason why it didn't work is because Zoran is actually inside of these communities. Like, and Bernie was old when he was running in 2016.
Also, I think the other reason is because he's also brown. You know what I mean? Like it's not the same as being Black, but like. He is literally not like a white man. He is not like Bernie Sanders, Yeah. So I think that also plays a role in this as well. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Being in these communities is a huge part of it. Yeah. Okay. But I mean, see, people are still doing it. Does African American not mean from Africa? He's mixed brown and Black. No, he's not Black. He's not Black. He's Indian.
It's a weird. It's not necessary to defend it. Like when you go out of your way to be like, oh well, well, actually, technically, this is what it is. Like I think a lot of it comes from a parasocial nature as well, not just with Twitch streamers, but also with like the politicians. Like you'll see a lot with AOC, where like AOC has a lot of like political stands. So whenever AOC makes a bad decision, there are people who are attacking AOC and then defending AOC from like a parasocial like avenue. And so like I think people are doing that as well with Zoran Mamdani to be like, I need to defend him in every regard against every undue attack because that's my guy. And I must defend my guy instead of like what is actually effective for the movement. And then I'm going to do what's actually effective for the movement.
Yeah. No, I try to reinstate that in this chat all the time, where I try to explain to people that it's not like these are not people that you should have a parasocial relationship with, that they're going to do good things and do bad things, and you should criticize them when they're doing bad things. Yeah. I will say, I guess, like in terms of how the Democratic Party and like liberal institutions have been able to so perfectly capture the attention. I wouldn't even say like loyalty necessarily, but like more so the attention of the older Black community. I think like it's mostly turnout, right? Like that's what I've always assumed, and community leaders that are directly aligned with the Democratic Party, or basically a part of the Democratic Party's like establishment turnout machine.
Yeah, I think it's two things. First, I think it's actually identity politics, what people call identity politics. I think that is definitely a part of it because Black people seem to be in the upper echelons of leadership in the Democratic Party. They identify with, like the Jim Clyburns and people of that nature in the party.
Yeah.
I think that is a part of it for older Black voters. Because my grandparents live in South Carolina, and they're not pro Jim Clyburn, but like they like seeing people that look like them in places. So I think that's a small part of it. I think the bigger part of it is about like safety and like security and falling back on the status quo because like, historically, white supremacy has been so pervasive and damaging to the Black community. If it's the choice between like, the Democrats who suck, but, are kind of feckless, and the Republicans who make it worse, it's easier to fall back on like the status quo and safety as opposed to like flipping the coin. Yeah. As opposed to like flipping the coin against, maybe get something good with a progressive, or them losing, and now we're stuck with something even worse. And it's incorrect messaging, but it's something that we have to message around because that's the way they view a lot of elections.
Yeah. I think like one thing that I talked to FD about as well, and I don't know if you ever heard me talk about this, but like I have a sneaking suspicion that the generational divide that's happening in all demographics, but especially the Black voting bloc in general, is because of the last time that Black people remember when the Democrats actually did something for Black people. So that's why, like, the older you are, the closer you are to a time when the Democrats did actually stick their neck out, kind of, for Black people. But it was significant, right? Especially because like the bar is so goddamn low. And I think the younger generation is like that's where there is definitely like almost a separation. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this. But I feel like the younger you get, the less you care about politics in general. And I mean that like even Gen X onward, like even with Black millennials, I feel like they either, if they're interested in politics, they either like someone like a Zoran style candidate. They might like AOC. Well, there's also Jasmine Crockett. I think like Jasmine Crockett does get a lot of play, unfortunately, even though I don't like her.
I'm not a Jasmine Crockett fan.
Yeah,
I will say I think Jasmine Crockett and Kamala Harris represent something in the Black base of the Democratic Party, and that is a very an adherence to very overt like Blackness, like Black culture. Like they're both a part of Divine Nine fraternities and sororities. They are both like Black women, very outspoken, and I think a lot of people see that and they project themselves onto that image of like, oh, this is a Black person who's not afraid of being Black in politics and standing up to like white supremacy as a whole, even though they don't do that. But that's what they see. And when you're in these spaces, because I went to a HBCU as well. So when you're in these spaces, community is kind of everything. It's about seeing people around you and that look like you doing things and fighting. Like protests are huge on like HBCU campuses and things of that nature. Like there was an encampment at the one I went to last year, and so like it's very much about like being Black and Black being central to people's identities. And they see Jasmine Crockett as like yelling at Marjorie Taylor Greene, being like, That's what I like.
Yeah.
I want more of that. It's like people who want Zoran because they want to fight her against Trump.
Yeah.
But it's that, but like from an optic perspective, because like Jasmine Crockett's not actually fighting against like
Yeah.
the Republicans, but
No,
they
I
see
definitely see that.
yeah, they see a black woman doing that, and they're like, we need more of this. We need fighters. We need people who are unabashed and loud and talking back to the evils of the MAGA base. And I think that's also where identity politics comes in, because they see that from a black woman and they adhere to that because they feel that inside of themselves. They see white supremacy bearing down on them, and they're like, if I was in this space, I would be doing what Jasmine Crockett's doing, and that is yelling at Marjorie Taylor Greene. And that's where we need to come in as leftists to be like, that's actually not effective. What you should be doing, if you actually hate these things, is you should be doing what Zoran Mamdani is doing, because that's what is actually effective. And we need to be capturing that anger and refocusing that anger around to like where people actually need to go.
I agree with you. I'm just reading my favorite Gen X chatter, Demi Charm, getting mad. I'm sure you've seen her name. I've yelled at her many times over the years.
She's in my chat,
yeah,
as well. So.
Jasmine Crockett is being herself. No one has to agree, but dismissing her is not cool to me. Look, I really respect Demi because, like, after years of me banning her and yelling at her over and over again, she's still in here. She has not. She still watches. She still disagrees with me every day, especially the moment that I say anything Black issues related. But she's still in here, very resilient.
Yeah.
No, this is the type of stuff like for example with Demi, this is exactly what I mean when someone comes in and is like when I'm talking about, I don't know, when I'm talking about Palestinian advocacy or like undocumented migrants getting kidnapped, and people are like, you don't understand, Black people are tired, this is not our fight. And it's like
Obama's tired and stuff like that.
Obama's tired. That was the craziest one. Like, Obama is a Black man and he's tired. Yeah, he's tired from what Netflix deals.
Yeah, I mean, I think in chat I've defended you on this before because I do agree with you. I've said it before myself. Like, I don't quarter any Black liberal who wants to check out of the movement because they've classified themselves as tired and they don't want to actually do the work. Because for me, it is foundational to the Black identity to be against oppression for all people. This is just how I view it. This is how I was taught by my parents. This is how I was taught growing up. This is what I saw when I was going to an HBCU. Like, when oppression is happening, right? Black people are the people who understand. Like, we are supposed to get it, and you are not allowed to check out from the movement because you have thought that your fight is over. And this is where I understand people's
but Black people's fight's not over either. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's just not over. Like,
yeah, but like when people see Kamala Harris almost make it, because she's trying to run again, but when they see Kamala Harris almost make it to the presidency, or they see Obama being the president, they view that as the win and not like actual. Because I think again a problem is the white progressive base is not offering solutions to the Black community. They're not saying, hey, we're going to fix the issues that you are facing here. They want to fix, issues in general, which I think is not a bad thing, but that's just what it is. And so they think like maybe, maybe Obama will get it. Maybe Kamala Harris will understand it. Maybe Jasmine Crockett will get into the position and actually fix the issues that we're being faced with. And that's a lie. It's not true. But it's either, you're not being spoken to at all, or somebody utilizes their identity to, get into a position of power and do nothing with it. And then you're just kind of stuck here as a Black person without your issues being fixed by either regard. And it's a frustration. So that's why people will just take the win when it comes to like Kamala Harris or whatever. Also, I think that they're also just liberals and they're not done learning yet.
No, for sure. There's definitely an ideological disagreement there, 100%. I think the most nefarious version of this was Obama, though, because like he actually did understand it 100%. Like, coming from his background, like, or who he associated himself with, leading up to his campaign, how he communicated on these issues during his campaign, and then just kind of casting all of that aside to continue the racial pecking order, to refuse to fix any of these problems. And on top of that, not just problems like within the Black community, but like problems in problems that he advocated against for all Americans that then created unimaginable resentment on top of the fact that he was, you know, a black man and kept being called an African Muslim socialist when he was none of those things, unfortunately. If he was like all three, he would have been great, I think. The Israel stuff would be packed up. There would be no more issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope this was productive.
I hope so. I hope my chatters stop yelling.
Yeah.
I think I was able to portray how I felt and how a lot of chatters feel, but no promises that the frustration ends there. But
Okay.
I think that we came to a conclusion on this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important to recognize amongst my community and my chatters is that, like, when I pick and choose like who I'm criticizing or how I'm criticizing in a weak moment or whatever, that doesn't extend to like every single grievance that that people bring up that isn't like immediately class centered. Like it's not about that at all. There are instances where like someone is coming into the chat specifically to like put forth a ridiculous claim, to be like, you are anti-black. Like when someone, and oftentimes I do this, like I banned a chatter named Afro Luffy earlier because he was like, you need to stop talking about black issues. And it's like, I get that frustration. I didn't ban him permanently. I gave him a week off. But like, that's a 48-month subscriber, okay? That is a 48-month subscriber that knows better. Like, he's been in here when I've talked about black issues. He's just mad in that moment, and he wants to chirp, and I don't think it's the same as, like, a valid critique. But once again, that doesn't mean that, like, my behavior is something that you guys should be doing all the time to other people, to other content creators whose community that you're going into. You know what I mean? Like, that's ridiculous. Especially because, like, people don't know what your background is. People don't know if you're a black person or a white person at all in the chat. You're just anonymous, and you're anonymously, at the end of the day, you're anonymously yelling at a black leftist content creator who's also a part of this community as well. And I guess my point is, just don't. How do you know if the critique is valid if you reject it out of hand? Because saying don't speak on black issues to a political commentator that speaks on all issues is not valid critique.
I do think that. I told my community this as well, because like, oftentimes they'll be like, oh, they will kind of come into the chat and kind of pop off with like a snippet message without explaining their position. And so like it's very hard to, you know, to message don't speak on black issues as a valid critique, instead of being like, you know, I think you could benefit from having a black perspective when talking about insert X here. But it's also Twitch, so people like to, you know, be inflammatory on the platform.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, but you never ask why they don't want you to, man. No, I do, and then they don't say anything. Anyway, all right. Well, thanks, Sean, for coming on. SeanDaBlack, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Hopefully this was a productive discourse. All right.
Great.
Peace.